Bump! Lucilla woke, blinked as her eyes adjusted to the dim lighting, and lay still with all her senses alert. It was almost midnight from the time on the wall display. Her hammock swayed gently. No, that motion was wrong. Why would the hammock move? She checked her air intake and sat up cautiously, holding onto the sides of the hammock. Bang! The whole room shook violently, tossing her onto the floor. It was a quake, a major quake judging by the rocking of her domed shelter. Pain stabbed as she bumped her head on a hard object. The interior lighting activated with her motion. Her body rolled against the interior wall. Lucilla clung to the textured surface and dragged herself upright with her back to the solid wall. Fear quickened her breathing. She scanned the room, taking stock of the damage. Most of the furniture was bolted to the floor. Her chair lay on its side by the desk. The precious comm was fastened securely to the desktop. But her data chips had fallen off the desk and littered the floor, and as she stared, a coffee mug rolled to the opposite side of the cabin. The quake had left an untidy mess strewn over the interior of her dome. The dome stopped shaking and grew quiet. Lucilla seized advantage of the lull and scrambled to her feet. The transparent dome was intact. She rushed to check the monitors. The station had power and the precious air hadn't leaked. She waved her hand to dim the lights and gazed outside the dome. As always, she admired the beauty of the stars against the blackness overhead. So many bright stars, many more than were visible through the grimy smog of overpopulated Earth. The dense pinpricks of stars in the spiral arm of the Milky Way galaxy cut diagonally across the black sky. The moon Phobos was a tiny dot gleaming in the lower east quadrant of the sky. As she noted the moon's position, her comm beeped to announce an incoming signal. The hawk icon flashed. Phobos to Mars 3. Phobos to Lucilla. Lucilla, are you all right? Jasper spoke abruptly, without his normal cheeriness. She felt a surge of relief mixed with exasperation at the sound of his voice. Jasper often ignored the formal protocols for communication. Still, she was glad to know he was watching her station. Mars 3 to Phobos. Lucilla here. Yes, I'm okay. No injuries. I'm assessing the damage from the quake. Over. Roger, Lucilla. Seismic monitors went crazy. It's a huge quake. The epicenter is 50 kilometers west of your dome. The dome's intact. Minor disruptions inside. I'll check the outside surface next. Watch out for aftershocks. I have a shuttle, but I'll be out of contact in 1 hour when Phobos sets. Bye, Lucilla. Stay safe. The hawk vanished from the screen. No jokes this time from Jasper. She remembered the one occasion 4 years ago when she had been in his shuttle. He was the jesting pilot on the awkward ride from the spaceship, while she was tongue-tied from anxiety about her future on Mars and scarcely spoke a word. After 4 solitary years, she looked forward to Jasper's jokes in their daily calls. Lucilla activated the sensors and gazed outside. The rising sun cast long shadows and warmed the sandy ground. At first, she saw nothing unusual. The buggy was still fastened on its platform by the airlock, and the greenhouse dome loomed to her right. Was the greenhouse tilted slightly? She focused on an irregular bulge at the base of the large dome. Her lenses shifted through the spectrum until she identified the bulge as a mass of orange angels. While she watched, the sunlight reached the angels and they rippled into life, flowing slowly around the base of the greenhouse. She gasped as the greenhouse dome shifted to one side. Fear froze her for a minute. The plants were her main source of food. She shook her head. It wasn't safe to go outside, but she had to know the worst. Dev, she yelled. Green lights flashed as the robot woke from its rest phase and its head swiveled toward her. Lucilla ordered, "Go outside and collect a sample from the angels at the base of the greenhouse. When you come back, wait inside the airlock for instructions." Dev took the sample tubes and lumbered to the airlock. Lucilla returned to her position, leaning on the inside wall of the dome and watching the angels on the greenhouse. They crawled around the metal base, but seemed unable to creep up the transparent dome. Crack! The noise penetrated through the audio monitor, and to her horror, the dome tipped sideways until the upper edge lifted from the ground. Air hissed from the raised lip of the dome. Her plants would die in the frigid temperature. The robot moved steadily toward the angels massed around the greenhouse. Dev stepped on a bubbling mass of angels. The robot halted, then sank slowly onto one leg and toppled over. Red emergency lights flickered over Dev's head. In less than a minute, the red lights faded. The angels crept over the robot, leaving empty spaces in the shell encasing its body. Lucilla screamed. Insight smashed into her mind. The mutant angels had eroded the steel supports on Dev's legs and the metal mesh of the robot's armored skin. Their new proteins allowed them to eat metal. The molecular mechanism was clear in her mind. The ion channels pumped out hydrogen ions and generated acids to etch the steel, producing iron atoms, which were grabbed by the other new proteins. Hastily she pulled on the bulky helmet and grabbed the comm, hitting the symbol to call Phobos. "Jasper," she yelled, abandoning any formalities in the emergency. "The angels are eating the steel supports. My greenhouse is busted open and they're creeping closer. I'll escape in the buggy. The wheel tires are synthetic and should resist the angel acids. I'll run a quick test first." She didn't have time to wait for his reply. Oh no, Rosalie was in danger too. Lucilla punched the code for Mars 2. "Watch out, Rosalie, the mutant angels are eating the metal struts. They've cracked open my greenhouse." She slammed down the comm and gathered her emergency supplies. Radio, medical kit, food concentrates, extra oxygen, and the portable water recycler. Then she rummaged in the workshop compartments and found the patch kit for the buggy tires. Lucilla sat at the remote controls, placed a test piece of tire material in the suction tube, and carefully maneuvered the robotic arm to drop the piece into the angels clustered near Dev's pitted body. She focused her lenses on the thin strip and waited. After 5 minutes, the strip was untainted and the metal-hungry angels rippled away from it. Relieved, Lucilla sighed and hoisted the bag of supplies over her shoulders. Why hadn't Jasper called back? She daren't risk staying in the dome any longer. The supports might be attacked any minute. She hoped Rosalie wasn't immersed in her sims and had seen the comm signal. Lucilla clipped the comm to her sleeve and went to the airlock. Before she exited the dome, she checked the sand outside the door. Lines of angels crept inexorably toward her shelter, but the path was still clear to the buggy. She jumped to the ground, took 2 long strides and leaped onto the platform. Next minute, she was inside the buggy, examining the maps from her cross-country trip. The most direct route to the Rocky Highlands was full of angels. Instead, she traced a detour over a rock ridge with very few tendrils of the colored bacteria. Lucilla hit the starter. The buggy clunked off the platform, rolled over the nearest streaks of angels and headed for the hills. The buggy moved slowly, but outpaced the growth of the angels. Fewer green and yellow threads were visible among the rocks. Soon Lucilla hoped to reach higher and safer ground. A distant rumble caught her attention. The sound swelled in volume, surging nearer. Boom! Just ahead, a fissure cracked open in the ground and the crevice roared towards the buggy. She screamed. Not another quake. The open jaws of the chasm rushed underneath. The buggy lurched at a crazy angle and slid slowly yet inevitably into the gaping hole. Sand and stones shattered onto the roof. Lucilla gasped. She would be buried alive. Hiss! Air leaked from a hole in the cabin. "Jasper!" she yelled, hitting the comm in a desperate hope. Bump! The floor buckled. She fell from the seat, flung out her arms and crashed against the cabin wall.